The fallen empire, the galaxy trembled under the iron rule of the Kelvani Empire for 3,000 years. Their massive warships, each the size of small moons, drifted through space like metal gods. No species had ever challenged their power, and lived to tell the tale. The Kelvani stood 12 feet tall, with thick purple skin that could deflect plasma bolts. Their technology was ancient and perfect. Energy shields that could stop entire fleets. Weapons that could crack planets in half. They ruled over 47 different species. Across 10,000 star systems. Captain Vex stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Dark Crown, watching another world burn below. The planet Mora 7 had refused to pay tribute. Now its cities were glass and ash. This was the Kelvani way. Submit or die. "Sir, our scouts report something strange," said Lieutenant Cole, his 4 eyes blinking in confusion. "A small ship approaches from the outer rim. It bears no known markings." Vex laughed. "A sound like grinding metal. One ship? Against the entire Third Fleet? What species dares such madness?" "The ship appears to be of unknown design, sir. Our scanners cannot identify the materials used in its construction." On the main screen, a sleek vessel appeared. It was tiny compared to the Kelvani warships, perhaps only 500 meters long. Its hull was white and blue, with strange symbols painted on its side. It moved with purpose through the debris field of destroyed planets. "Open a channel," Vex commanded. "Let us see who seeks death today." The screen flickered. A bipedal creature appeared, standing upright on 2 legs. It had pale skin, small eyes, and no visible natural weapons. It looked fragile, almost pathetic. "I am Captain Miller of the Earth vessel Defiance," the creature said. Its voice was calm, steady. "You will cease your attack on civilian populations and withdraw from this system." The bridge fell silent. Then Vex began to laugh again, joined by his crew. The sound echoed through the massive ship. "Earth?" Vex wheezed. "We have never heard of this Earth. You command us? A single tiny ship against our fleet of 200 vessels?" Captain Miller's expression did not change. "This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences." "The consequences?" Vex's laughter stopped. His eyes narrowed to slits. "You dare threaten the Kelvani Empire? We who have ruled the galaxy since before your species crawled from whatever mud pit spawned you." "I see diplomacy has failed," Miller said quietly. "So be it." The transmission ended. The human ship hung motionless in space, dwarfed by the massive Kelvani fleet surrounding it. "Destroy that insect," Vex snarled. A dozen Kelvani destroyers opened fire. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids unleashed their fury. Energy beams that had ended countless civilizations converged on the small human vessel. The weapons struck and did nothing. The human ship's shields flared bright blue for a moment, then returned to normal. Not a scratch marked its hull. "Impossible," breathed Lieutenant Cole. "Our weapons should have vaporized anything that small." Captain Miller's voice came through the come again, uninvited. "Your turn is over. Now it's mine." The human ship moved. Not the slow, stately drift of Kelvani vessels, but sudden and violent. Like a striking snake. In seconds, it crossed the distance to the nearest destroyer. What happened next would be spoken of in whispers for generations. The human ship fired a single beam of bright white light. The Kelvani destroyer, 3 kilometers. Of armor and shields that had never known defeat, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was scattered atoms. "All ships fire at will," Vex screamed. "Destroy that thing." The entire Third Fleet opened fire. 200 warships unleashed enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. Space itself seemed to burn as thousands of weapons converged on the human vessel. Again, the blue shields flared. Again, The ship emerged unharmed. And again, it struck back. Another beam of light. Another Kelvani ship reduced to cosmic dust. This cannot be happening, Vex whispered, his purple skin pale with fear. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Kelvani commander watched his ships die and could do nothing to stop it. The human vessel continued its deadly dance through the fleet, each movement precise, each shot perfectly aimed. One by one, the pride of the Kelvani Empire became debris. In 10 minutes, 100 ships were gone. In 20 minutes, only 50 remained. The survivors began to retreat, abandoning their posts in terror. Captain Miller's voice cut through the chaos one final time. Tell your empire this. Humanity has found you, and we do not approve of bullies. The Defiance vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the shattered remnants of the once mighty Third Fleet. The age of Kelvani dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. News of the Third Fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the great throne room of Kelvin Prime, Emperor Drax sat on his crystal throne, his massive frame trembling with rage and something he had never felt before: fear. Explain to me again how 200 of our finest ships were destroyed by a single vessel. Drax's voice boomed through the chamber, causing the windows to shake. Captain Vex knelt before the throne, one of only 3 survivors from the disaster. His proud purple skin was now pale and scarred. My emperor, their weapons were beyond anything we have seen. Our shields meant nothing. Our armor was paper. They moved faster than our eyes could follow. And you simply ran? Drax's 4 eyes burned with fury. We fought, my lord. For 20 minutes, we threw everything we had at them. They brushed aside our attacks like dust in the wind. Around the throne room, the emperor's advisors whispered among themselves. For 3,000 years, the Kelvani had been the apex predators of the galaxy. They had conquered, enslaved, and destroyed countless worlds. The thought that something could challenge them was impossible to accept. High General Rex stepped forward, his battle scars gleaming on his thick hide. My emperor, perhaps this is an isolated incident. One advanced ship does not make an empire. Then explain this, said Intelligence Chief Knox, activating a holographic display. Images flickered to life, grainy footage from security cameras and spy drones throughout the galaxy. The first image showed a human settlement on the rim world of Theta 9. Where once there had been empty space, now stood a massive space station. Ships moved around it, not just 1 or 2, but hundreds, all bearing the same white and blue colors as the vessel that had humiliated the Third Fleet. This appeared overnight on 17 different worlds, Knox continued, all in systems we had marked as empty or primitive. The humans were already there, waiting. More images followed. Human ships patrolling trade routes. Human stations orbiting. Strategic planets. Human forces where no humans should exist. How long? Emperor Drax's voice was deadly quiet. We estimate they have been expanding into our territory for at least 50 years, my lord. Possibly longer. They hid their presence from our scouts somehow. Drax rose from his throne, his 12-foot frame casting shadows across the room. 50 years? Our intelligence network spans the galaxy. How did we miss an entire species building an empire under our noses? Before Knox could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Red lights flashed as emergency broadcasts filled the air. My emperor. A young officer burst into the throne room, forgetting whole protocol. The Fourth Fleet at Rigel System. They're under attack. The main display activated, showing live feed from the battle. Admiral Kane's flagship sent desperate transmissions as human vessels emerged from hyperspace around them. But these were not single ships like the Defiance. These were battle groups, sleek destroyers, massive carriers, and dreadnoughts that dwarfed even Kelvani vessels. Impossible, breathed General Rex. How many ships do they have? The battle was one-sided. Kelvani plasma cannons struck human shields and dissipated harmlessly. Human weapons carved through Kelvani armor like hot knives through flesh. In minutes, another proud fleet of the Empire was reduced to scrap metal. But what happened next shocked. A throne room into silence. Instead of destroying the escape pods and survivors, the human ships stopped firing. They began rescue operations, pulling Kelvani sailors from the wreckage. A transmission came through on all frequencies. A human female appeared on screen, wearing a crisp blue uniform with gold insignia. "I am Admiral Stone of the Human Colonial Defense Force," she said. "To the survivors of the Kelvani Fourth Fleet, you are now prisoners of war. You will be treated according to the laws of civilized warfare. Your wounded will receive medical care." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "To Emperor Drac and the Kelvani leadership, your empire's reign of terror ends now. For too long, you have enslaved and murdered innocent species across the galaxy. Humanity will not stand for this injustice. You have 3 standard days to begin withdrawal from all occupied systems and release all enslaved populations. Refuse, and we will remove you by force. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." The transmission ended. The throne room remained silent for long moments. Finally, Emperor Drac spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "How many of them are there?" Intelligence Chief Knox checked his datapad with shaking hands. "Based on current intelligence, my lord, we estimate at least 10,000 combat vessels, perhaps more." 10,000? General Rex staggered backward. "The entire Kelvani Navy has only 8,000 ships." Emperor Drac's legs gave out. For the first time in his 1,000-year reign, he collapsed back onto his throne. The unthinkable had happened. The Kelvani Empire faced an enemy that was not only stronger, but vastly outnumbered them, the galaxies. Rulers had become the hunted dot asterisk. 3 days passed like a nightmare for the Kelvani Empire. Emperor Drac had called emergency sessions with his war council, but every plan they discussed seemed hopeless. How do you fight an enemy that treats your strongest weapons like toys? On the 3rd day, as the human deadline approached, intelligence. Chief Knox burst into the war room with a datapad clutched in his trembling hands. "My Emperor, I have found something. Information about these humans and how they became so powerful." Emperor Drac looked up from the tactical displays, showing human forces surrounding dozens of Kelvani worlds. "Speak quickly, Knox. We have little time." 53 years ago, our 4th expansion fleet encountered a small blue planet in the outer rim. A species there called it Earth. They were primitive, barely capable of spaceflight. We classified them as Level 2 civilization, not worth conquest. General Rex snorted. "I remember that report. Weak bipeds with no natural weapons or armor. We decided to ignore them and focus on richer worlds." "That was our mistake," Knox continued. "We left a monitoring station in their system and forgot about them. But the humans ... they found it." The holographic display activated, showing grainy footage from the abandoned Kelvani station. Human figures moved through the corridors, there, faces hidden behind primitive breathing masks. They studied every piece of technology, every weapon, every shield generator. "They reverse-engineered everything," Knox said. "But they didn't just copy our technology, they improved it. Made it better, stronger, more efficient." Emperor Drac leaned forward. "How is that possible? Our technology has been perfected over millennia. Because they think differently than we do, my lord. We conquered the galaxy through strength and fear. We never needed to innovate, because nothing could challenge us. But humans ... they had to survive. They had to adapt. The footage continued. Human scientists worked day and night, taking apart Kelvani plasma cannons and rebuilding them with strange modifications. They studied the shield technology and created something entirely new, barriers that didn't just stop energy, but absorbed it and fed it back into their weapons. They spent 50 years preparing for this moment, Knox explained. While we grew fat and lazy on our conquests, they turned themselves into the perfect weapon against us. A new transmission interrupted the briefing. Admiral Stone appeared on the main screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood representatives from dozens of species, beings the Kelvani had enslaved and oppressed for centuries. Emperor Drac, Admiral Stone began, your time is up. Since you have chosen not to comply with our demands, Operation Liberation begins now. She gestured to the aliens behind her. These are the leaders of the Free Species Alliance. Every world you have conquered, every people you have enslaved, they have joined us. They have shared their knowledge, their resources, and their desire for freedom. The camera pulled back to show the interior of what could only be described as a massive command center. Humans worked alongside bird-like avians, insectoid zephyrs, and crystalline nexus beings. All species that had once cowered before Kelvani might now stood united. You see, Emperor, your greatest weakness was never military, Admiral Stone continued. It was moral. You ruled through fear and oppression. We offer something you never could hope. General Rex slammed his fist on the table. Lies. Those species are weak. They could never stand against us. As if in response to his words, the tactical displays around the war room began flashing red. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Slave worlds were rising in rebellion. Conquered species were throwing off their chains, and leading every uprising were human advisors and weapons. The Nexus Crystal worlds have activated their planetary defense networks, came one report. The avian fleet has declared independence and seized the mining stations in Sector 7, came another. The Zephyr hives are swarming our garrison forces on 12 different worlds. Emperor Drac watched his empire crumble in real time. Worlds that had been under Kelvani control for thousands of years suddenly had the weapons and courage to fight. Back. How? He whispered. On screen, Admiral Stone seemed to hear him. You want to know how we accomplished this? It's simple. We did something you never learned to do. We listened. Every species you conquered had knowledge you ignored. The Nexus understood energy better than anyone. The avians were natural pilots and engineers. The Zephyrs were experts at coordination and tactics. She smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You saw them as slaves. We saw them as allies. You took their worlds. We offered them partnership. You gave them chains. We gave them weapons. The transmission shifted to show massive factories on human worlds. Aliens and humans worked side by side, building the ships and weapons that were now dismantling the Kelvani. Empire. This is what cooperation looks like, Emperor. This is what happens when species work together instead of one dominating all others. The screen went dark. In the war room, alarms continued to blare as more reports of rebellion and defeat poured in. Emperor Drac sat in stunned silence. His empire wasn't just losing a war, it was being torn apart from within by every species it had ever wronged. The humans hadn't just built a better military. They had built a better idea. Emperor Drac stood on the observation deck of his fortress. World watching the stars disappear one by one. Each vanishing light meant another human fleet had arrived. Another piece of the blockade falling into place around Kelvin Prime. My Emperor, General Rex approached, his armor scarred from the failed defense of the outer worlds. Our remaining fleets have pulled back to defend the homeworld. We have 2,000 ships in orbit. And how many do they have? Drac asked, though he dreaded the answer. Our scouts count over 5,000 vessels. Human ships, but also Nexus, crystal cruisers, avian fighter swarms, and Zephyr battle clusters. They've turned our former slaves into an army. Through the reinforced windows, Drac could see the distant flashes of weapons fire as the siege began. The humans weren't rushing to attack. They were methodical, precise, cutting off each escape route and supply line. A communication request came through on the emergency channels. Drac nodded grimly. He knew who it would be. Admiral Stone appeared on the main screen, but she looked different now. Her uniform was battle-worn, her face marked by the strain of commanding a galactic war. Behind her, Drac could see the bridge of what must be the largest warship he had ever seen. "Emperor Drac," she said simply, "this is your final chance to surrender. Order your fleets to stand down, release all prisoners, and submit to trial for war crimes. Do this, and we will spare your people." Drac's 4 eyes burned with rage. "You dare offer mercy to the Kelvani Empire? We who have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. "Your empire is finished," Stone replied calmly. "Look at your tactical displays. 70% of your territory is now free. Your slave species have joined us. Your military is outnumbered 3-1. This can end with your surrender, or with the complete destruction of your remaining forces." "Never," Drac roared. "We are Kelvani. We do not surrender to lesser species." Admiral Stone's expression hardened. "Then you have chosen extinction." The transmission ended. Within minutes, the battle began. The human-led alliance struck from all directions at once. Nexus crystal ships fired beams of pure energy that cut through Kelvani armor like paper. Avian fighter squadrons moved in perfect formation, their pilots' natural flying ability enhanced by human targeting systems. Zephyr battle clusters swarmed. The larger Kelvani vessels, their coordinated attacks, overwhelming even the strongest shields. But it was the human ships that truly terrified the Kelvani defenders. They moved with impossible speed and precision, their weapons striking with surgical accuracy. Every shot found its mark, every maneuver perfectly calculated. Admiral Kane, commanding the defense from his flagship Iron Throne, watched his formation crumble within the first hour. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, they're not fighting like any enemy we faced before. They're sharing information instantly across all their ships. When one vessel learns something, they all know it immediately." On the human command ship, Captain Miller stood beside Admiral Stone, coordinating the attack. Around them, human officers worked alongside aliens from dozens of species, their combined knowledge creating a symphony of destruction. "Nexus energy. Readings show weak points in their main battle line," reported a crystalline officer. "Avian scouts have identified their ammunition stores," added a bird-like pilot. "Zephyr swarm tacticians recommend a pincer movement on their left flank," suggested an insectoid commander. Miller nodded, processing all the information. "Admiral, we can end this quickly if we hit their command ship directly." Stone studied the tactical display. The Kelvani flagship was massive, bristling with weapons and surrounded by layers of escorts. In the old days, such a fortress would have been impossible to assault. "Do it," she ordered. The human ship Defiance broke from the main formation, its hull gleaming as it accelerated toward the enemy flagship. Captain Miller's voice came over the call. "This is for every world you burned, every species you enslaved." The Kelvani threw everything they had at the approaching vessel. Plasma cannons that could melt moons, particle beams that could crack planets, missiles that could level cities. All of it struck the Defiance and accomplished nothing. The human ship's return fire was a single, brilliant beam of white light. Admiral Kane's flagship, the pride of the Kelvani Navy, simply ceased to exist, the site of their most powerful vessel. being destroyed in an instant broke the remaining defenders. Ships began to surrender, their crews broadcasting messages of capitulation. The few vessels that tried to flee were quickly captured by the surrounding alliance forces. Emperor Drac watched from his fortress as the last of his space fleet surrendered or was destroyed. In 6 hours, the military might of the Kelvani Empire had been reduced to floating debris. "My Emperor," General Rex said quietly, "we must evacuate. The orbital bombardment will begin soon." But Drac remained at the window, watching the human ships take positions around his world. For 3,000 years, the Kelvani had been the apex predators of the galaxy. Now they were prey. "No," he said finally, "we end this here. Activate the planetary defense grid. If we fall as Kelvani." Above them, Admiral Stone's fleet prepared for the final phase of the war. The planetary defense grid of Kelvin. Prime activated with a thunderous roar that shook the entire world. Massive energy cannons rose from hidden bunkers across the planet's surface, their barrels glowing with deadly power. Shield generators hummed to life, creating a protective dome over the capital city. Emperor Drac stood in his war room deep beneath the palace, surrounded by the last of his loyal commanders. The chamber's walls displayed tactical information from across the planet. Millions of Kelvani soldiers preparing for what they knew would be their final battle. "The orbital shields are at maximum strength," reported Defense Minister Tor. "There. Ships cannot penetrate to the surface." "And our ground forces?" Drac asked. 2 million troops defending the capital, another million spread across strategic positions. Every Kelvani citizen capable of holding a weapon has been armed. General Rex studied the displays showing the human fleet above. "My Emperor, they're not attacking. They've been holding position for 3 hours now." Drac frowned. In his experience, overwhelming force meant immediate assault. The humans' hesitation puzzled him. What are they waiting for? His answer came in the form of a transmission broadcast across all frequencies on the planet. Admiral Stone appeared on every screen, but this time she wasn't speaking to the Kelvani. Leadership. She was speaking to the people. "Citizens of Kelvin Prime," she began, her voice somehow gentle despite the circumstances. "I am Admiral Stone of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We know that many of you have lived your entire lives believing that conquest and domination are the natural order of the galaxy." The transmission showed images from newly liberated worlds. Former slaves building their own cities, different species working together, children of various races playing in shared schools. "But there is another way," Stone continued. "On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, former enemies now live in peace. The strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Knowledge is shared instead of hoarded. This is the galaxy we offer. You." Emperor Drax snarled and tried to cut the transmission, but somehow the humans had overridden every communication system on the planet. "We do not wish to destroy Kelvin Prime," Stone said. "This world has seen enough death. We offer every citizen the chance to lay down their weapons and join the galactic community as equals, not conquerors." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder. "But we will not allow the Kelvani Empire to continue its reign of terror. Those who choose to keep fighting for the old ways will face the consequences." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, reports began trickling in from across the planet. Entire military units were laying down their weapons. Civilians were refusing orders to man defensive positions. The Emperor's own propaganda had backfired after seeing what the rest of the galaxy looked like under human leadership. Many Kelvani no longer wanted to fight for their empire. "Traitors!" Drac roared. "Order all loyal forces to arrest anyone who surrenders." But General Rex was reading his tactical display with growing horror. "My Emperor, We've lost 60% of our defensive forces. They're simply walking away from their posts. Then we fight with what remains, Drac declared. Activate the planet crackers. The room fell silent. The planet crackers were weapons of last resort, massive bombs that could split a world in half. They had been built centuries ago as the ultimate deterrent, never meant to be used on Kelvin Prime itself. My Emperor, Defense Minister Tor said carefully, those weapons will destroy our own world. Everyone will die. Better to die as Kelvani than live as slaves to humans. Drac's 4 eyes blazed with madness. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then let it burn. Before anyone could stop him, Drac's hand slammed down on the activation control. Deep beneath the planet's crust, ancient, weapons began their final countdown. Above the surface, human sensors detected the activation immediately. Captain Miller's voice came through the cum from the Defiance. Admiral, massive energy buildup detected. They're going to crack the planet. Admiral Stone closed her eyes for a moment. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this. All ships emergency. Teleportation protocol. Begin evacuating every life form on the planet. Admiral, that's impossible. There are billions of people down there. Then we save as many as we can. Stone's voice was steel. This is what separates us from them. We don't abandon people, even our enemies. The human fleet moved with incredible precision. Teleporter beams reached down through the failing shields, grabbing anyone they could find. Kelvani soldiers, civilians, even the few remaining loyal officers. Ship after ship filled with refugees. As the planet crackers neared detonation dot in his bunker, Emperor Drac watched the evacuation with bitter laughter. Fools. They're saving the very people who sought to destroy them. General Rex looked at his Emperor with new eyes. Perhaps that's why they won, my lord. The countdown reached 0. Kelvin Prime, capital of the greatest empire in galactic history, tore itself apart in a blast of nuclear fire. But in the holds of human ships, millions of Kelvani survivors watched their world die and began to understand what they had lost, and what they might yet gain. 6 months after the fall of Kelvin Prime, the galaxy looked nothing like it had for 3,000 years. Where once there had been an empire built on fear and oppression, now there was something unprecedented. A true galactic council where every species had an equal voice. Admiral Stone stood before the assembled delegates in the great Hall on New Haven, a space station built specifically to house the new galactic government. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber, including dozens of former Kelvani subjects who were learning to govern themselves for the first time in millennia. The refugee situation continues to improve, Stone reported. To the Council, of the 8 million Kelvani survivors we evacuated from their homeworld, nearly 6 million have chosen to integrate into the new galactic community. A crystalline Nexus delegate raised a glowing appendage. What of the remaining 2 million? Do they still resist? Stone nodded gravely. They have requested to be relocated to a single world where they can maintain their traditional ways without the ability to threaten other species. We have agreed to this arrangement. An avian representative chirped anxiously. Is it wise to allow them to remain together? What if they rebuild their military? They won't, came a new voice from the back of the chamber. General Rex walked forward, his once proud purple skin now marked with scars from the final battle. He wore simple civilian clothes instead of his military uniform. The chamber fell silent. Many delegates had never seen a high-ranking Kelvani official up close, especially one who had chosen to cooperate with the new order. I speak as one who served the Empire for 800 years, Rex continued. The Kelvani way of life is finished. We ruled through strength, but our strength came from the fear of others. When that fear is gone, we are just another species trying to survive. He looked directly at Admiral Stone. The humans showed us something we never understood. That true power comes from lifting others up, not crushing them down. Those who cannot learn this lesson will spend their remaining years on a dead world, dreaming of past glories that will never return. Stone nodded respectfully. General Rex has been instrumental in helping us understand Kelvani culture and technology. His insights have prevented countless conflicts during the transition period. A Zephyr delegate clicked its mandibles. What of the former slave worlds? How do they fare under self-governance? The display screen activated, showing scenes from across the galaxy. On Mora 7, the world that had been burned by the Kelvani at the beginning of the war, new cities were rising from the ashes. Avian architects worked alongside human engineers and Nexus, crystal shapers to create buildings that were both beautiful and functional. Production has increased by 30% on average across all former slave worlds, reported the economic advisor, a former Kelvani bureaucrat who had chosen to serve the new government. When people work for themselves instead of for conquerors, they accomplish amazing things. The screen showed mining operations where Zephyr workers collaborated with human supervisors to extract resources safely and efficiently. Research stations where different species shared knowledge freely. Trade routes protected by mixed fleets of ships from dozens of worlds, all working together. But the most significant change isn't economic, Stone added. It's cultural. For the first time in galactic history, we have species actively choosing to work together instead of being forced to. A young human officer approached the podium and whispered something to Admiral Stone. She nodded and turned back to the assembly. I've just received word that the exploration fleet has returned from the Outer Rim. Captain Miller, would you like to address the council? Captain Miller walked to the podium, looking older but more at peace than he had during the war. Council members, we've discovered something remarkable in the unexplored regions. 17 new species, all at various levels of technological development. The chamber buzzed with excitement. New species meant new knowledge, new perspectives, new possibilities. In the old days, Miller continued, the Kelvani would have immediately moved to conquer these worlds. Instead, we've made peaceful contact and offered them the choice to join our galactic community as equals. He smiled. 15 of the 17 have accepted. The other 2 have asked for more time to consider, which we have granted. No pressure, no threats, no ultimatums. General Rex stood again. This is why you won, he said quietly. Not because your weapons were stronger, though they were. Not because your ships were faster, though they are. You won because you offered something the Empire never could hope. Admiral Stone looked around the chamber at the hundreds of delegates from Vim. Across the galaxy. Former enemies sitting beside former slaves. Predator species working with prey species. Ancient rivals collaborating on shared projects. The Kelvani Empire fell because it was built on the belief that some species were meant to rule while others were meant to serve, she said. But we've proven that cooperation is stronger than domination, that diversity is stronger than uniformity. She paused, looking out at the stars visible through the great windows of the station. The age of empires is over. The age of equals has begun. Asterisk 25 years had passed since the fall of the Kelvani Empire. Captain Miller, now Admiral Miller, and showing his age with gray hair and weathered features, stood in the memorial garden on New Haven Station. Around him, crystalline trees from the Nexus worlds grew alongside earth flowers and avian singing plants, creating a symphony of colors and sounds that represented the galaxy's new unity. Before him stood a simple monument made of metal from the destroyed Kelvani fleet, transformed into something beautiful. The inscription read, "To all who died under tyranny, and all who lived to see freedom, may we never forget the price of both." Grandfather Miller, a young voice called out. A small girl with the pale skin of humanity, but the four eyes of the... Kelvani ran up to him, her hybrid features marking her as part of the new generation that was growing up in this transformed galaxy. "Hello, Nova," Miller smiled, kneeling down to embrace his granddaughter. She was one of thousands of hybrid children born from unions between former enemies, living proof that the galaxy had truly moved beyond its dark past. "Tell me the story." "Again," she demanded, settling beside him on the memorial bench. "About how the humans saved everyone," Miller chuckled. "We didn't save everyone, little star. We just showed them they could save themselves." He pointed to the busy corridor beyond the garden, where beings from hundreds of species moved together in peaceful coexistence. Zephyr engineers discussed projects with human scientists. Avian traders negotiated with Nexus merchants. Former Kelvani citizens worked alongside the descendants of their former slaves. "When I was your age," Miller began, "the galaxy was ruled by fear. One species dominated all others through violence and terror. But your grandmother's stone had a different idea. She believed in working together," Nova recited, having heard this story many times. "That's right. And do you know what happened because of that belief?" Nova's four eyes sparkled. Everything changed. Miller gestured to a group of young adults passing by. Humans, Kelvani, avians, and others, all wearing the uniform of the Galactic Exploration Service. Look at them. 25 years ago, their species were enemies. Now they explore the stars together, seeking new life and new civilizations to welcome into our community. The Memorial Garden's information display activated, showing current statistics from across the galaxy. Miller read them aloud. 347 species now part of the Galactic Council. 0 active wars between member species. Poverty eliminated on over 90% of inhabited worlds. Life expectancy increased by an average of 40% across all species. Nova listened with fascination. "And the bad Kelvani?" "They're not bad anymore," Miller corrected gently. "They chose a different path. Some learned to change, like your grandmother. Others retired to their reserve world, where they live quietly and peacefully. Even they send representatives to the council now." A chime sounded across the station. "Attention all citizens," came the announcement. "The ceremony for the launch of the Deep Space Exploration Initiative will begin in 1 hour." Miller stood, taking Nova's small hand in his. "Come on, let's go watch history being made again." They made their way to the observation deck, where thousands of beings had gathered to witness the launch of humanity's most ambitious project yet. Through the massive transparent walls, they could see a fleet of ships unlike anything that had ever been built. These vessels were not warships, but exploration and colony ships designed by the combined knowledge of every species in the galaxy. Nexus crystal technology provided their power cores. Avian engineering made them incredibly fast and maneuverable. Zephyr coordination systems allowed perfect communication across vast distances. Human innovation tied it all together into something greater than the sum of its parts. Admiral Stone, now elderly but still commanding, stepped to the podium. Her voice carried across the deck and was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. "Today, we launch not as conquerors, but as explorers. Not as masters, but as friends. These ships will carry our message to distant galaxies, that intelligence and compassion are not weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths to be celebrated." The fleet began to move, their hulls gleaming in the light of New Haven's star. One by one, they activated their hyperdrives and vanished into the depths of space, carrying the galaxy's hopes with them. Nova pressed her face to the window, watching the last ship disappear. "Where are they going, grandfather?" Miller smiled, remembering another time when a single human ship had faced impossible odds and changed everything. "Wherever they're needed, little star." wherever there are people who need to learn that they're not alone in the universe. As the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Miller remained at the window with his granddaughter, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the known galaxy, were countless worlds and species yet to be discovered. Some might be primitive, just learning to reach for the stars. Others might be advanced civilizations with their own empires and conflicts. But whatever they found, Miller knew one thing for certain. They would not face the galaxy's children as conquerors or destroyers, but as friends offering the greatest gift humanity had ever discovered, the knowledge that cooperation was always stronger than domination.